So I'm going to be talking for about for about half an hour, and then we're going to do a few practical exercises. So the purpose of today is so we call it anxiety busting, and I'm going to be explaining how the mind works. In brief, we're going to hopefully we're going to learn some stuff about the mind. We're going to understand a little bit about the mind, and along the way, my intention is that we have a bit of fun too with some of the practical techniques that I'm going to teach you. And these practical techniques, you'll be able to start using them straight away. So a little bit about me. Won't spend too long here, but you can see I've been a professional hypnotherapist now for 3 years. My business is DM hypnotherapy, as Carolyn said, based in Norwich, face-to-face and online sessions. And I mainly focus in 3 areas: anxiety, weight loss, and quit smoking. But by far, the anxiety is just in the last couple of months has just really taken off. I would say 90% of my clients or more are I'm helping them with anxiety. I see male clients, female clients, adults and children. The youngest I've seen was 10 years old. The oldest is 92. So there's no age restriction in terms of being able to learn how to manage your mind. And just very quickly, the modern approach to anxiety, if you went to the doctors, if you were suffering apart from medication, the modern approach through the wellbeing services is CBT, which is cognitive behavioral therapy. And CBT and medication, they both have their place, but they also have their limitations too. CBT analysis has shown that the effectiveness of CBT is something around 30 to 50%, which actually is only just above the effectiveness of placebo. And of those who have successfully completed a CBT course through the wellbeing service, sadly, a significant portion of them are back on medication within 18 months, and apparently that gives a revised effectiveness of somewhere between 1 and 15% when it comes to CBT and medication, and hypnotherapy and the tools that I use. I can't give you any statistics, but I know that every client I see has an experience, and they feel completely different, transformed within a short number of sessions. So let's just quickly go through. What I was going to say was I have been there in terms of in terms of anxiety. I suffered for a big portion of my life for about 8 years. I was and many years before that, but I went to the doctors. I was diagnosed clinically depressed, was put on medication, was put on Prozac, and I suffered and struggled for about 8 years of my life. And I went to see somebody. My mate called this, at the time, my mate called this person a head doctor. I went to see this head doctor, and completely transformed my life. And what I know now is that what she helped me with was hypnotherapy, and that is a significant part of my journey to being a hypnotherapist and to being here talking to you tonight. So what is anxiety? Anxiety, as you see on the slide, is a general term for several conditions that cause nervousness, fear, apprehension, worry, and panic. Now, anxiety, is it an illness or is it a disorder? And many things are labeled as a disorder. People talk about generalized anxiety disorder. Is it an illness or is it a disorder? Or is it just an emotion? Anxiety is a normal reaction. It's a normal survival mechanism which is inbuilt into all human beings. there are some physical symptoms with anxiety. Our heart beats faster. We tend to breathe very shallow at the top of our lungs, and that causes at times to like overbreathe. We start to sweat, we get lightheadedness and dizziness. All these are normal physical reactions to a surge of adrenaline. It's when the anxiety is completely out of proportion to the situation that it becomes an issue. And very often the words stress and anxiety are used sort of interchangeably, but stress is not anxiety, and anxiety is not stress. Too much stress, an overload of stress for a long period of time, can cause an anxiety-related problem. But they are different. Stress and anxiety are different. As stress itself can be a good thing. Stress, too much stress can be a bad thing as well. And stress is often caused by an external influence, like, for example, a deadline at work. That would be an example of an external influence. And stress itself is often only present if the trigger is present. You take away the trigger, and the stress reduces. Whilst anxiety, it's an internal response. It's an internal response rather than external trigger. It's an internal response, often brought on by stress, and lasts long after the trigger has gone. Anxiety can affect people in different ways, from panic attacks, phobias, OCD, excessive worrying, social anxiety. I'm hearing a lot about health anxiety, and now especially in these times of COVID and coronavirus, and often undercurrents of anxiety, they often lead to other issues like depression, addictive behaviors around alcohol, gambling, even food, even shopping. These are all ways of providing a temporary relief to continuous anxious thoughts. Anxiety at its most basic level is an emotion. Anxiety at its most basic level is an emotion. Anxiety is not an illness. And I'm going to explain quite a bit more about anxiety shortly. So anxiety statistics, you can see here that anxiety is highly treatable, yet only something like 37% receive treatment. And 1 in 4 people will experience some form of mental health problem in their life. Yeah, and since the COVID pandemic, research has shown that depression and anxiety symptoms have significantly increased, whilst referrals to mental health services have dropped considerably, especially during the first lockdown. So this next slide, I'm just going to put the gallery view back up. How many people on the call tonight, how many people would say that they have anxiety, or in the past they have had anxiety? You can just pop your hand up. Okay, I can see a hand from Claire. Okay, okay. So it's that word interesting. People talk about having anxiety, or they have had anxiety. And the first step, when you want to work with a client, the first step to recovery is that I talk to clients about labels. And what I encourage them to do is scrap that whole thing about I have anxiety. Because anxiety is not something that you have. Anxiety is not a condition that you have. Anxiety is something that you do. Anxiety is something that your mind does. And when you begin to accept that anxiety is something that you do, you start to understand that it's within your control. And when you start to understand that, it's only then that you can start to do something about it. So the first step in busting anxiety is to think of anxiety differently. Once we begin to look at things differently, the things we look at change. There's a very famous self-help guru, a guy called Wayne Dyer, and he's famed for saying, when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. And the same is true with anxiety. So if you have been diagnosed with an anxiety-related condition, in other words, you have been given a label, this also leads to expectations and beliefs about who you are and what that means. And that in turn can create significant limiting beliefs that hold you back, that hold recovery back. And this was true for me when I was diagnosed. So I was, think back now, I was about 32, and I was diagnosed as clinically depressed. Now, at the time, it was a relief for someone to say, you're feeling like this because you're clinically depressed. That was a relief at the time. But now I understand that that was a label. And I held on to that label for such a long time. In fact, I held on to that label for 8 whole years of my life. So my first point about anxiety is to ditch any labels that you have placed on yourself or others have placed upon you. Our, sorry, that skipped on twice. Our brains are literally changing shape all the time. There's something that within the therapy world, certainly within hypnotherapy, something that we refer to as Hebb's law. And Hebb's law states that neurons that fire together wire together. So every time we learn something new, we are literally making new connections in our brain. We're literally changing the landscape of our brain and therefore changing our mind. And it's important to understand that our minds and our body are intrinsically linked and provide a constant communication between each other, mind to body, body to mind. And anxiety can affect our whole body with all these physiological symptoms. Whilst anxiety starts in the brain, it can affect our entire body. Okay, so just going to reduce the gallery down again so I can see the slide. Okay, so we have a conscious mind. We talk about we have a conscious mind and an unconscious mind. And the conscious mind, the logical part of our mind, the rational decision-making, the thinking part of our mind, is logical, it's linear and limited in capacity. Depending on which book you read, you might read that the conscious mind accounts for about 5% of our entire mind. Some books state 10%, but I always go with the 5%. 5%, that's our conscious mind, 5% of our entire mind. Our unconscious mind accounts for 95% of our mind. Our unconscious mind is vast. That's our database of every life experience that we've had. And the unconscious mind can be irrational, can be illogical as well. Our unconscious mind is a pattern-making machine, with the sole purpose of keeping you alive. Information passes through to our unconscious mind through association and repetition. And if you think about it, there's many things that I'm sure you can do in life that you don't have to think about too much now. At first you did, and a good example of that is driving. So at first you were really having to sort of really think about everything that you did, but now many people can drive without really thinking too much about the driving. And 10 miles might go by and you think, oh, I'm here already, because you've been driving unconsciously. And it's that association and repetition that allows us to do that. Our two minds, they work together. We acquire knowledge consciously, and then this information is passed to the unconscious mind where it becomes automatic. So what causes anxiety? We have a part of our brain called the amygdala, which is responsible for the acute stress response. This is the fight, flight, freeze response you may have heard of. And this part of our brain is triggered when we perceive a danger or a threat. And when it is triggered, it releases that adrenaline, and it causes the heart rate to increase, the blood pressure to go up. Your pupils dilate to take in as much information as possible. Veins near the skin constrict to send blood down to the muscles. It takes blood away from the stomach because in the state of crisis, digestion is not an important bodily system. So blood is taken away from the stomach, and that's sometimes why when you feel that those anxious feelings that some people feel it in the pit of their stomach. That's a phrase that I hear a lot, and it takes blood away from the brain as well, because in that fight, flight, freeze response, your body is being prepared to run for its life, essentially, to run for its life, survival mode. And you don't need to think too long and hard about that. If you were running away from a big brown bear or a tiger, you don't need to think about that. You just need to respond, react, which is this fight, flight, freeze response. The problem is, though, this system that we have that's hardwired in was not designed to be continuously activated. And an even bigger problem in today's society is that we're constantly under stress from our personal lives. Everything appears to be life or death. And so that's what causes anxiety. And evolution has provided us with lots of survival mechanisms, and these can be categorized into two: protection and growth. Protection is about survival, and then growth. And even as fully grown adults, we are continuously growing. The thing is, you cannot be in a state of protection and growth at the same time. Protection, this survival, will always outdo growth, will always trump growth. And that's why almost every major illness is linked in some way to chronic stress. So we weren't born with anxiety. No one was born with that. If you think about young children, they don't have a care in the world. They're not born with anxiety. Our fears are as a result of conditioning. Our fears have been learned. They've been learned through experience and observation. And this starts to happen around the age of 8, when what we call the critical faculty is formed. You can think of this critical faculty like a security guard protecting the information that is passed to the unconscious mind. Most of our beliefs are created in childhood. And it is part of the natural brain function to generalize and categorize information, to allow us to be able to interpret the world around us. Each time we enter a situation, our brain will do a search to see if we have a map of how to respond in this situation. Have I seen this situation before? Anything similar? And how did I respond? How did I react in the past? This is a lot like doing a Google search. And just like Google, it will bring up the closest results of things that are like or similar to the information received. the more we use these maps, our programming, these program maps, the more we use these maps, the stronger and more hardwired they become. And the brain always wants to take the easiest route possible to be efficient. So it will always choose to follow a previous behavior or a previous habit in response to a trigger or a cue, rather than consider creating a new one. So as I'm talking about these things here, I'm thinking about anxiety, and anxiety can be as much of a habit, one of these programmed maps, an automatic pattern, as most other things that we do in life. And we condition ourselves to believe all sorts of things. And these things aren't necessarily true. And many of these things have a negative impact on our health and our happiness. What we see is unique. It's personal. It's our own personal virtual reality that is massively constructed by our brains. Sight, what we see, is an illusion. And to create this illusion, your brain must consult your memories. It must consult your conceptual understanding of the world, your knowledge, your opinions, your beliefs, your emotions, all of this and more. And it is this complex system that allows us to see, and most of this happens at an unconscious level. What we see is, in fact, a construction of your own making, which is an illusion. It's something that is experienced passively, and we just accept it as reality. Our mind is incredibly brilliant, but on some level, our brain does not know the difference between what is real and what is imagined. And I'm just going to go back to gallery view here. I'm going to, as I'm talking about that, trying to bring up the gallery again. Okay, as I'm talking about that, our at some level, the brain does not know the difference between what is real and what is imagined. I'd like to share with you a little exercise. I'm just going to stop the share for a moment, so that put it on gallery here, so I can see some faces. I want you to just for a moment, just play along with me. I want you to put your hand out in front of you, so straight out in front of you. I want you to close your eyes. And with your eyes now closed, I want you to imagine holding a lemon. Imagine holding a lemon. Just in your mind's eye, just see that lemon. See the peel of the lemon. See the texture of the lemon, the color of the lemon. Feel the weight of the lemon. And I want you now to bring that lemon close to your nose and imagine smelling it, and smelling that really zesty smell. And now I want you to imagine taking a big bite into that lemon. And then open your eyes. So with your eyes closed, who saw the lemon? Could you see the lemon? Could you feel the weight of the lemon? Feel the weight of the lemon. Could you smell the lemon? Okay, a few hands there. And could you taste the lemon when you bit into it? What was that like? But let me ask you this. Where was the lemon? Where was the lemon? Our brain does not know the difference between what's real and what is imagined. If you imagine something so vividly, it feels real. And so in this sense, anxiety is not real. Anxiety is just a product of our imagination. And it causes us to worry about things that don't exist or may never exist. Consequently, anxiety is a response caused by how we think. That's all it is. Anxiety is a response caused by how we think. I'm going to jump back into the share because I'm going to show you something that sorry, I'm having to go back to. I'll jump back into here. Okay, I'm going to show you something else. Now, when I first saw this just blew my mind, and this proves the point about what you see, what you think is not real. So, can you see the chessboard there? Can everyone see the chessboard? Yep. Okay. There are two squares marked on the chessboard, A and B. Now, I'm going to sound a bit like an optician now. Which is darker and blacker? Is it the A or is it the B? So hands up if you can see that A is much darker than B. Yeah? A looks much darker than B. Agreed? You see the red square on there? If I just took B now, I just moved that square, and I'm not changing the color at all. In fact, to do this, I'm going to have to jump out of the presentation again. Okay. I'm sorry it's made it a little bit smaller now, but can you see the red rectangle there? Let me just pick that up. And what I've done is I picked up B. Can you see that? I picked up B. And I'm going to move B over to A. Now, when I first saw that, I just like, what's going on there? I'm going to move B back to B. Now, the color is not changing. The color is not changing. But now if I leave that there for a moment, you know it's the same color. But your brain cannot show you that it's the same color. And the reason for that is that the chessboard, your brain knows that chessboard is black and white. And so that it knows that if I move that out of the way, it knows that that square is black and that square is white. Your brain is telling you that. But you know that they're the same color, and yet you can't see it. What you see is an illusion. And anxiety is an illusion too. That was the point of me putting that in. Anxiety is just an illusion too. Okay, I'm just going to minimize the gallery again. And okay, our brain acts as a filter. With the chessboard there, you were filtering out lots of information in order for your brain to tell you what you thought was there because it was a chessboard. And your beliefs about the world act as just like a filter on a camera. Life is an illusion created by your perception. And it can be changed the moment you choose to change it. We filter our experiences based on our beliefs and our values. It's not what happens, it's not the event, but it's the meaning that you attach to the event, which are all about the emotions. They're all about the emotions that you experience at the time. When we're anxious, the part of our brain that is required for cognitive thought, that prefrontal cortex, that logical part, when we're anxious, that goes offline. And our thinking becomes very black and white, all or nothing. And then we rely on our unconscious maps, our programming. And our brains, according to neuroscience, is wired to reflect everything you know and believe to be true in your life. Have you ever wondered why some people that you might deem as lucky, they seem to attract opportunities, and those who believe they are unlucky, they're never short of evidence to prove themselves right? And one answer to that lies in how our brains work, and in particular part of our brain called the reticular activating system. And the reticular activating system is designed to bring into conscious awareness what is important to you. It determines what we do pay attention to, and it filters out the unimportant. And a very classic example of that is when you buy a car, or when you change your car, you're really pleased about the car that you've chosen. And then what happens? You go out onto the road, and then it seems like everyone's got one. Now, did they all go out on the same day and buy that car? No, the cars were already there. It's just that it was being filtered out. And your reticular activating system, now that type of car is important to you, it brings it much more into your conscious awareness. And then you start spotting them everywhere. And that's an important concept to think about in our brains. This is how we think. This is our programming. And everything, it all starts with a thought. There's been numerous studies that support the power of thought. We only need to examine the placebo effect. And one of the most common theories is that the placebo effect is due to a person's expectations. If a person expects a pill to do something, then it's possible that the body's own chemistry can cause effects similar to what a medication might have caused. What we think, we become. Thoughts create a chemical response in our brain. Thoughts become things. And just because you can't see thoughts, it doesn't mean that they're not there. If you drop an apple on the floor, you know gravity caused it to fall. You can't see gravity, but you don't question it. You can't see it, but you can see the effect of it. Just like your thoughts, you can't see them, but you can feel the effects of them. Thoughts lead to choices. Choices lead to behaviors. Behaviors give us our experiences, and experiences give rise to emotions. So if you keep thinking the same way, what do you think that creates more of? It's just going to create more of the same. In effect, you're reminding yourself of who you think you are. And the same is true with anxiety. All of this is true with anxiety. How long do you think we can feel an emotion for? How long can you be anxious for? Well, the life of a thought is however long you want to think it. The life of an anxious thought is however long you want to think it. Emotional drives like anxiety have a limited lifespan. they can only last about 90 seconds. When that thought sparks, it can only last 90 seconds. And for the feeling to continue, we have to keep sparking it off over and over and over again with our thoughts. And that's why anxiety, anxious feelings can last for minutes, hours, days, weeks, because we constantly feed it. So it's really important that you do start to pay attention to your own internal dialogue. Think now about your favorite self-sabotaging stories. We all have them. You have the power to start anxiety with a thought. So you have the power to stop it. You have the power to stop it. So we're gonna have a bit of fun for a few moments, if that's okay. I seem to have lost the. Let me escape out of here. I seem to have lost the gallery. Where?
David, is it under view options at the top? If you go right up to the top, then your cursor should say view options. You see that?
I can hear you, but there. Let me stop.
Or in the top right corner, there might be.
Right. So I stopped this. For some reason, I lost the gallery completely. Now, normally you've got view at the top corner, but I've just lost it completely. I was wondering. I was getting a bit anxious myself then. I was thinking, have I been talking for like half an hour with no one there? Okay. We're going to do a couple of sort of demonstrations. I want to show you the ability, the power of your mind. Okay, this one's going to, if you want to play along with this one's going to involve you standing up in a moment. You don't have to be able to see the screen as long as you can hear me. That's absolutely fine. So who's gonna? I'm not going to ask you to dance or anything like that. Don't worry. So who's going to play along with this? Yeah. Okay. Let's have a bit of fun. What I want you to do is I want you to stand up for a moment. So if you're going to play along, just stand up for a moment, and I want you to raise your right hand out in front of you. So you point your finger out in front of you, and I want you to rotate in a clockwise direction. So we're going to go round to the right. Rotate in a clockwise direction. Don't do just yet. Let me explain. You're going to rotate in a clockwise direction until you start to feel uncomfortable. All right, and then I want you to stop. And I want you to make a note of how far you get. So essentially, what are you pointing at? So just try that for me. Just point your finger out and rotate around. Keep looking along that arm, along that pointy finger. Keep going until it starts to feel a little uncomfortable. Okay. And take a note of what you're pointing at, and come, and then when you've done that, come back to stay where you are now. So you've all done that. What I want you to do is I want you to close your eyes now. I want you to close your eyes, and I want you to imagine doing the same thing again. Just imagine doing the same thing again. So imagine following that arm round, and imagine this time that you're going further, much further. Just imagine that you're going further and further and further. And then imagine coming back to the front And imagine doing it again, and be a bit playful with it this time. In your mind, imagine that you're going to go much further. Imagine you could go all the way around, like 360 degrees. So you're pointing at the front again, you twist it all the way around. Be really playful with it in your mind. And when you've done that, have another go. Put your right hand out, pointy finger, look down your finger, and then turn around again and see how far you go this time. When you've done that, you can come back down. Okay. So what happened there? Did anyone go further? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. And when you turned around, was it like, whoa, how did that happen? That's sometimes the experience I get. And that happened, that change happened because you imagined it, you visualized it, you saw it in your mind, and your brain allowed that to happen. The brain is a very powerful thing. It can work for us. It can also work against us in the same way. If you spend all your time imagining anxiety and imagining the worst, then that's what your brain is going to give you. If you imagine something entirely different, then what you get, the result will be entirely different too. When you did that arm turn thing, your ability didn't change. All that changed was you imagined doing it. And when you imagined doing it, you created a neurological pathway for that possibility to happen. So that's the first one. And the important point there is you need to be, if you're going to use this as a technique of visualization, you need to visualize what you want, the best possible outcome, rather than imagining the worst. Because if you imagine the worst, that's what your brain is going to give you. So this next one is a very quick one. If you're going to use this in the future, you can simply try it now. What I would encourage you to do is think about something that makes you feel anxious, that gives you some anxious feelings, and give it a number between 1 and 10, 10 being the worst. So let's say, you're thinking about it, really imagining it, and it was a 8. Then what you would do is you would squeeze the middle finger of your non-dominant hand. So I'm right-handed, and so I would squeeze the middle finger of my left hand, and I would squeeze the middle finger of my left hand for about 2 minutes. Now, squeezing the middle finger of my left hand, this works because that finger is connected to a meridian line in your body, which reduces anxiety. And meridian lines are part of the energy system in our body. The concept of meridians comes from traditional Chinese medicine, acupuncture, and even back in the ancient history of Japan as well. So that is a very quick, very simple, effective technique. And if you were like in a meeting or any sort of situation, just simply holding your hands together like this, you can be squeezing that finger, but also appear very relaxed, and other people may not know what you're doing, but you're using this technique to help reduce anxiety. Another quick one I'm going to give you. You'll be able to use this in the future. So again, think about that thing that makes you anxious. Give it a number between 1 and 10, 10 being the worst. And then you start by holding an item out in front of you. Now, I'm holding a pencil, could be a pencil, a ball, keys, whatever. This item you hold out in front of you, you would bring it difficult for me to get it on the camera, but you bring it out to the side, you bring it to the front, and you pass it to the other hand, and you bring it out to the side again. So simply passing it across the middle, out one side, and then the other side, and then one side, and the other side. You would do that for about 20 passes. And after 20 passes, just check in with the anxiety. What this is doing, because this is something called bilateral stimulation, because you are passing an object across the center of your body from one hand to the other, what you're doing is you're rebalancing the two hemispheres of your brain. So that is just another quick a quick technique that you can do. Not one that I recommend you do whilst you're driving, but it's something that you can do just to reduce that anxiety by balancing the activity in your mind. Reduces that anxiety. There are a few other techniques. I'm conscious of time, and I'm thinking that it might be useful, Caroline, if in the next couple of days, if I was to put together like an information sheet or something like that, and people could contact you, I guess. And
yeah, that would be gret. Thank you.
And then we can email that on. There are a few more exercises. As I said, I'm conscious of time, but breathing is one which I'll just cover off. A breathing technique which is called 5-7 breathing. So it's breathing in for the count of 5, holding for the count of 2, and then breathing out for the count of 7. So 5-7, 5-7. Breathing like that for 2 minutes when you're anxious, when you're in that state of sort of hyper alertness, slowing down the breathing like that regulates the alertness level, counteracts the anxiety response, which in turn slows down our thoughts. So breathing is probably one of the best. This controlled breathing, 5-7, is probably one of the best things that you can do. Other things, and I'll just give you the headlines. Exercise, really good one to help reduce anxiety. Mental rehearsal, and this is about thinking and imagining what you want rather than what you don't want. Planning your response. If you're going into a situation and you think you might be a little bit anxious, then plan it out beforehand. Plan it out and mentally rehearse it beforehand. And this whole thing about our negative self-talk, the language of the thoughts in our mind is really important. Remember, all this stuff that you tell yourself, remember, you are always listening. You're always listening. So I'm just going to very quickly jump back into the share here. Okay. What I have got, and if you have a pen, you can write this down. The bottom of the screen there is a you'll be able to just type that in. It'll take you to a page. You'll have to pop your details in where you can download a free anxiety relief pack. Through that page as well. If you wish to book a call with me, then that's fine, and we can have a talk about it if you think that I may be able to help you in the future. But the anxiety relief pack might be useful. There's a couple of things there. There's a pure relaxation hypnosis, like an audio download, and just a very full-page ebook, 5 simple tips to relieve anxiety and stress. So you can get that from dmhypnotherapy.uk/take-control. And that's it. I can hear the countdown clock now. And yeah, so let me jump out of the share.